As you came to this campus, there's some people here, but we're a small, unique, non-traditional university. And we pride ourselves in that, the fact that we are different. Our undergraduate programs are degree completion programs. So they offer students that have that diploma the option to do years 3 and 4 in one full year on campus in an accelerated format. Now, if you decide you want to do that Bachelor of Commerce and you want to do it online and keep working, we do offer in the blended model that we'll talk about as well, so you can do the online portion. Now, on campus, it's intensive learning. I know that I made the decision at 27 to come back to Royal Roads and leave my pretty great career behind. And at that point, I thought, I've hit a ceiling a few times, it's time to go back. And my fear was, leaving it all behind and what it was going to be like to come back to school, because I'd been out for a number of years at that point. The intensive learning that we have and we offer at Royal Roads is incredible. The opportunity to be a part of teams exists in both our on-campus programs, and you'll see as we talk about the online, we've also built a platform or a model of learning that is consistent in the online as well. So the on-campus option is great for those students that have the ability to be able to stop working and take that 12 months in intensive programming. The lasting relationships, the connection you have, especially if you're looking at the entrepreneurial program, the opportunity to do case studies and get involved in SIFE, which is Students in Free Enterprise, looking at opportunities to expand your horizons. I had the opportunity to go to Concordia in Montreal to participate in our first case competition that Royal Roads participated in. I graduated 10 years ago, so 2002, we went to Concordia, and at that point, Royal Roads was a very young university. We were in our 7th year, and I remember thinking, is anyone going to know who we are when we get there? And very few did. But by the time we finished the competition and came in second to Queen's, they all knew who we were. And interestingly enough, to talk about why life on campus is so intense, those students that we were competing with had already had a year and a half of study before us. And we'd been in the program for less than 6 months of intensive study. So you're really going to find at Royal Roads in all of our programs that the relevancy of the program, the study, you take back into your life. And I know the thing that was killing me the most as a student was, I wish I could have gone back to work tomorrow and applied these changes, because the course content, the academia was all very, very relevant. It's challenging, but it's rewarding. The class time is generally, you're going to be in class 30 hours a week in our on-campus programs, and you're going to be studying a number of courses per day, but the class time extends beyond that. Those who think they can hold a job while you're doing the 12 months on campus, I would really look at finding ways to not. Jason's shaking his head, and I'm sure, Trevor, you're saying the same thing, because you're going to fill all of your time with your teamwork, your project work, looking at your business models, all of those significant opportunities, and you don't want to miss anything from that intensity of the one-year program. So we'll move on to what it's like to learn online. At Royal Roads, our online learning is very unique and different. I know I took a course and got my books in the mail and started my program thinking, wow, okay, I can do this, and you're so excited for about 2 weeks, maybe not even that long. And then the enthusiasm dwindles, and the loneliness starts, and you think, oh, the procrastination's going to get me next, right? Because you're really looking at doing it on your own. That's different. The model we have at Royal Roads is you start with 3 weeks pre-residency, really allowing you to kind of get your feet wet if you've been out of school for some time, getting a sense of what our model is like, what's the learning platform like, how am I going to interact with students. Then you come on campus here in Victoria for an intensive residency. And that's anywhere from, in our graduate certificate programs, 1 week to 3 weeks in our program. So you'll come and you'll have a residency experience that really helps to take the learning to the next level. The online learning intuitive platform we use is Moodle, and it's customizable open source software that we've been able to, I saw that. See, I don't miss anything. You've had a Moodle experience, but you haven't had a Royal Roads Moodle experience. So online, the platform itself is really our way of being able to expand the network, but that's not what we use solely. We add to that, the faculty increase opportunities through Blackboard Collaborate for you to be able to engage wherever you are. And then you're in teams as well, as we'll talk to. So that engagement continues after you leave your residency into your distance learning. And I think the biggest point here is engaging with students and professors online. You need to do it face-to-face as well. You need that opportunity to see the eyeballs of the person you're in a team with, get a sense of what the faculty are like, And they, too, get a sense of who you are as an individual. What are your aspirations? What are you seeking in your research? And that opportunity presents itself because of the design of our online learning. Now, over the last, for those of you who are local and have been in Victoria for some time, and to our friends in the military, Royal Roads has been a beautiful place of learning for a long time, even beyond the time when we were Royal Roads Military College. It extended back to when the Coast Salish used to gather on these grounds. The personal approach that we take at Royal Roads is really looking at the history, looking at who we are as individuals and who we are as an institution, and bringing that into your learning. So whatever program you're taking, we want you to be able to have that engagement, whether it's on campus or online. And that personal approach extends throughout the program. April Trigg is a student in our Bachelor of Arts and Communications, and she's in professional communication. And she said, at bigger universities, you're a number. Here, all the profs know your name. And I can tell you, you're not going to be in a class of more than 55 people. And your faculty are going to know who you are as individuals, whether that be through the online engagement, through the residency, or through on campus. That's important. That's key to your ability to be able to expand your horizons and for them to be able to take, this vast amount of experience that each of you bring to the table. I mean, learning is only so good, but when you're able to apply the relevancy or you talk about a theory, and then your faculty can say, all right, has anyone experienced that? And you can bring that practice right into the classroom. So them knowing who you are, our faculty, is key. The on-campus residency, we typically call this an educational retreat. And you've all walked on the campus today, and you can see why we call it a retreat. But that's not because it's going to be luxury and you just kick back, come to the campus for 3 weeks and just take a break. It's really so that you retreat from everything back home. We ask you to retreat from your work life, to retreat from those commitments that you have that might really affect your learning here. Really preparing yourself, you'll know well in advance of being accepted when those residencies are, so you can start planning your life and preparing to retreat and to focus on that in your education. The concentrated learning experience. So you'll have, if you're taking an environmental program, you do lab work at that time, field work in our residencies. All of those pieces would happen in that on-campus, face-to-face portion. In our Master of Arts in Human Security and Peacebuilding, is that what you were talking about? I'm looking at it as well. The second residency is an international residency in Chile. So you'll have your residency in the field. So the Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, you see a little plus sign. The plus sign is everything beyond that. So you're going to have class time. You're going to have class presentations. That's why we ask you to introduce yourself right now. That might be uncomfortable today, but by the end of your program, it'll be second nature for you to be able to do those kind of things because of that plus. The presentations, the teamwork, the events that are planned for you on campus are all a very significant part of your experience. Building trust, earning respect, and working together is key to the model and to being able to take that learning and that residency experience into your distance learning. Speaking to the difference of Royal Roads and that online learning, I think some have said, I just want to take the online degree and really step away from having to do a residency. And those options are out there. But we truly, truly urge you to consider Royal Roads because of the residency. And the alumni that are with us today have experienced on campus, but we'll ask Colleen to talk about the power and the purpose of what the residency truly is for you as an individual. And I mean, you go back home and you have to talk to John and Kim, and you find out that in talking to them on campus, you know what they're like. So when they send you that email that comes in jest, you understand and you can read between the lines a little more effectively than if you didn't know that person before. This is a sample program structure. So this is, again, just an average layout of a 2-year graduate program on campus, or online, sorry. So you would look at a pre-residency, 3 weeks, where you'd engage online. Then you'd have a residency where you'd come to campus. And the dark portion is your online learning. Typically in the online learning, you'd be taking, in our social science programs, 1 course over 10 to 12 weeks, looking at 15 to 20 hours, 25 hours of work over and above your job to do that. If you're looking at our business programs, our Bachelor of Commerce online or our MBA, you'd be taking 2 courses over 10 to 12 weeks. So that's going to be a significant increase in your commitment during the distance learning as to the time. Now, it is designed, I'm going to say this, put this caveat in now, so you can be successful and have a full-time job. And those that have come before you have done so. You might think in your first residency it's impossible, but we've designed it so that you really get that nourishment in the residency to take into the distance, and it is intense. Then you'll come back for another residency, mid way through your program, and in some of the programs, which you can find this information on our website, the residencies at the end rather than midway through. And then you complete and graduate together. Now, with the same group that you started. Because of our non-traditional format, because the programs are designed program by program and not course by course, you start and finish with the same group of people. You start and you can count on the fact you're going to get all the courses you need to graduate as well. So we see a very high completion rate for the fact that you're integrating your learning throughout, you're working with others, and you're helping each other to stay through that program. And there's something about wanting to cross the stage with the same group that you started with. Even when things get tight for time and you're trying to finish that final project or your thesis, and you're smiling, Colleen, you're thinking, I can do this, but mainly because I want to cross the stage with the same group. So there is that motivation to do so within the 2-year, 18-month, or dependent on the program length of time. All this happens here, and I almost feel silly showing these pictures because you're on campus, but these may be places you need to see next time you come to the campus. Great shot that one of our team got. The Japanese gardens, have you been? Go and visit the Japanese gardens. They're gorgeous at this time of year. The Grant Building, this is the building just in front of us from the castle view. Being able to spend some time by the ocean, this is really key. Now, we don't give you that time. It's not built into the program. We don't say in the residency, this is your 2 hours of free time. You have to make it. When I see people, and I'm getting here at 6 in the morning and they're on a run, and I say, oh, what are you just a neighbor? And they're like, oh no, I'm in the residency. This is my only window. And I'm like, wow. You know, they're doing these incredible, they're making it happen. They're putting the time in. So making sure that when you do take and retreat to have the residency, that you get the most out of your experience. This is the building just below the Grant Building, and this is where our residencies are. Now, many of our local Victoria students have said, why didn't you tell me that I could have stayed on campus? You know, why didn't you tell me that was an option? And so we really do urge you to stay on campus. If you want the full richness of the experience, if you want to be up at, midnight chatting with those other students that you're studying with and kind of take that experience to the next level, make the commitment to stay on campus. It is $35 a night, $55 for an en-suite. If you don't do it the first time and see what it's like, and then you might want to do it for your second residency, but that certainly is an option for all of our students. One of our students, and I'm not going to pronounce his name in case I don't do it correctly, in the Master of Global Management program said, the campus ambiance, the atmosphere, the quietness, it all enriches your learning process. So making the time. Team-based. So we talked a little bit about the team-based experience. When you're in residency, when you're in your distance learning, you'll have opportunities to work in teams in all of our programs. There'll be team assignments. We do the best that we can to really break down the teams geographically so that you can work together in the geographic regions that you live in that first residency, but we want you to be able to interact with everybody throughout the program and throughout that cohort so that when you leave in 2 years, you've built those relationships with, very close relationships with up to 20 people because you've worked closely and intimately on a team. The team-based learning really expands the opportunity for you to digest the information as well as contribute in a different way. And I know we all know we don't get to pick always who we work with unless you're the boss. But you don't always get to pick who you study with at Royal Roads, and we do the best we can through team coaches and whatnot to make that experience a good one for you as well. And Sylvia in our Master of Global Management said, learning in small groups helps you see things from a global perspective. This Master in Global Management is the first full-time master's program that we offer at Royal Roads. It's 12 months on campus, and you're finished your master's. And the exciting part of that is you get to study with students from across the globe. The primary focus is international students coming here and really being able to interact and engage with the domestic Canadian students so that we can take the learning to the next level, looking at business from a global context. So different from the MBA where you're focused on business administration and the fundamentals of business administration at a general level, you're really looking at those pieces but also at the global level. And there's less of a work experience requirement for our Master of Global Management as opposed to our MBA. The relevancy of the learning. Being able to take what you're learning and put it into practice is really key motivator for most of us at this stage in our career. I had, like many of you, traditional academic experience and was looking at doing education for Catherine, who's the teacher, and I had to take finite math. Did you have to take finite math? I have never used finite math. And I remember taking it and saying to my instructor, will I ever use this? Oh, yes, you will. And I'm the kind of individual that needs to be able to see the relevancy. I need to be able to put things into practice. And at Royal Roads, in our Bachelor of Commerce program, I never once questioned if I would use the material. And I've heard that from all of our programs. Being able to take that scholar practitioner who's standing in front of the class, teaching you, because they're not just teaching the theory and the academic side. They're teaching you the practice because they've done it. They're facilitators. They're pulling out your knowledge and expertise and bringing that back into the classroom. So the relevancy, I think, to me, is one of the most powerful parts of Royal Roads, and being able to take the programs that we have and meet market demand in a way in which we can talk human security and peace building. We can get into the minds of communicators, looking at conflict analysis and management. Our 4 pillars that this university was built on were entrepreneurship, sustainability, leadership, and conflict resolution. We've since expanded to be able to offer programs in tourism and hospitality, as some of you were talking about, communications, looking at those options, and education studies as well. So the relevancy is certainly a big part of who Royal Roads is. Michael Monroe said, having a worldwide network of peers and mentors is a great way to advance your career. I left Royal Roads in 2005 after working here after graduation, and had the opportunity to work and live in Costa Rica. And I was very fortunate that I had some great people on my teams that filled the blanks in my life, because although I took commerce, my expertise was in accounting. So was it you that was talking about taking accounting? Or,
not liking every minute of it.
And that was a weakness for me. But we were able to, my strength was marketing and that side. But those individuals have been, really have become mentors and people that I would call upon in certain projects that I've been dealing with in my life. So that's one of the powers of this blended learning model. I'm now going to turn the time over to Lynn, who's going to talk to you about the application process.
I'm going to speak in general about the application process, but like I mentioned when I introduced myself, I really encourage you to take advantage of our enrollment advising team. Every program has slightly different requirements for applying, and though the information is available online, we can certainly talk you through the nuances for each program. In general, you'll want to start with, well, first of all, you'll want to investigate the programs and decide if this is right for you. Once you have decided you do want to apply, the first thing to do is fill in the online application form. It takes about 15 minutes or so. It's really just the nuts and bolts of who you are. And then you'll also pay the application fee, which is $108. That can be paid online, or you can submit a check. Once those 2 things are done, we've created then a digital and physical file for you so that the rest of your documentation as it comes in, we can match it quite easily. Each program in general is going to look for official transcripts, a personal resume, personal statement, and letters of reference. So with the resume, as I was speaking with Luke earlier, across the board in all of the programs, they would much rather see more of a CV than a resume. So, 12 pages is preferable to 2 in general. We really want to get a sense of who you are and what you've done. And what we're seeing more and more of, and I'm sure some of you can attest to this, is that more people are doing management level work and have management level responsibilities without the title and often without the pay. So a really detailed resume helps us see that. And one thing that I've certainly noticed is that people feel sort of reluctant to waste someone else's time or talk too much about themselves. We really want you to do that. I've sat on different admissions committees at UVic and other universities, and I can tell you it's human nature for people to want to say yes. And when you're submitting an application, the onus is on you. You're sort of marketing yourself to the best of your abilities to the admissions people so that they feel good about saying that yes. The personal statement is essentially a cover letter. Each program is going to ask for slightly different bullet points or information for you to include. But in general, we're looking for a little bit about who you are, what you can bring to the program and what you're hoping to get out of it. So we're looking for your motivation. That's a big part of the application and admission process here. Letters of reference, again, every program looks for different ones, but in general, it's going to be some combination of professional references, academic references, or community volunteer references. And you know, sometimes one of those isn't feasible, we can work with that and try to accommodate that, because a lot of people don't have the ability to get an academic reference. In that case, we'll take 2 work-related ones, that sort of thing. And that number there is the number for enrollment services for my team. So that's the toll-free number. But like I mentioned, my business cards are just out on the table there. Feel free to grab one of those. Our website's there. My email address is there. The local number for the queue is there too. And we're happy to speak with you over the phone, answer questions by email. If you want to come in one-on-one and meet with an enrollment advisor on campus, we're happy to schedule that. So whatever works best for you. And I wanted to just speak quickly about one of the components of our admissions process. I did a lot, I've worked in different institutions of higher education in the United States and Canada. I did my undergrad at UVic. Most recently, I was doing student advising at UVic before I came here. And I've done different things across campus, and most of the staff here is so used to hearing me gush about what an amazing place this is, but it really is. This is the best work environment I have ever been in. The best team, the campus is amazing, the things I hear from alumni are incredible, the faculty. And one of the things that makes my job so great is that we're an institution that works really hard to say yes. And flexible admissions is a big part of that. So whereas most universities are really quite focused on a quantitative analysis of an applicant, so they're looking for numbers that they can add to get a certain score, so you're in or you're out. At Royal Roads, we really try to be really holistic in our approach to admissions. So we try to look at the entire person, not just one portion of your life, which is your GPA, or lack thereof in some cases from other institutions. There's 2 things that we look for. One is indicators of past success, and the other is motivation. Those are the 2 things that we really look for. And with flexible admission, we're essentially looking at the whole picture of an applicant. When you go to apply, regardless of whether you're standard admission or flexible admission, you all pretty much submit the same material. You don't have to check a box or anything like that. It's mostly done on the admission side of things. But in general, for our programs, we try to have kind of 2 streams for admissions. One is where it's more traditional. So for example, at the graduate level, perhaps you have an undergraduate degree, a set GPA, work experience if it's required, and then it's pretty cut and dry. With flexible admission, you may not have a completed undergrad. You may have a complete undergrad, but your GPA is not high enough. There's a whole different host of options. But perhaps you have an incredible amount of work experience, very relevant work experience that you can bring to the program. And that is what we would assess a lot of our review of you on, is that. And one of my colleagues who worked in the School of Peace and Conflict Studies as a program associate, so she worked very closely with faculty and with staff. I asked her, from a program side where you don't really know who's flexible, who's standard admission, did you see a difference in the students? And without hesitation, she said, absolutely. I was like, and that was surprising to me. And I said, what is it? And she said that often the flexible admission students are hungrier and they work harder. And we have the statistics to show from our end that students who have been admitted under flexible admission do as well, and in some case better, than students who were admitted through standard. So we really encourage everybody to really apply. And our admissions advisors really work with you. If you aren't successful the first time you apply, we really try to say not yet instead of no, and work with you on how to strengthen an application should you apply later. And Penny Martin, who was a flexible admission student in MA Leadership, said, I was able to complete a full-time program in 2 years while still having a full-time job. And that's a big draw for a lot of our flexible admission applicants. You don't want to take the time out to have to drop out of your career for a couple of years while you're completing a degree. You can do it simultaneously. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to grab me after the presentation or contact me with my card, and I'll hand it back to you.
It's interesting, I think, as you go through the process, you start to understand why the process exists, why we ask you for that personal statement. As you start writing that personal statement, you'll realize if you're looking at 2 programs, what the right program is for you, having gone through that itself. And I mentioned I've been looking at the Human Security and Peace Building. I've also been looking at the MBA. It seems like the right move, right? I have a BCom, move into business. So I'm writing the personal statement, and I'm finding that, I'm leaning one way, or that is really clear because that's my goals in life. So take the time to put as much as you can into that personal statement. And we put the personal statement ahead of your reference letters so that you can prepare your referees. Share with them your personal statement if you feel comfortable doing so that they get a sense of your hunger and why this program and all of those pieces as well. And we're rolling admissions at Royal Roads. So if you decide, I've found the program I wanted to apply for, and you apply, you're going to find out 6 to 8 weeks after your application is complete if you've been accepted into that program. Then you can start looking at funding and start putting your plan together for your academic career. You can also apply up to 2 years ahead as well, so that gives you the chance to really do some planning. If you're looking at social sciences, looking at some of the grants that are out there, business, looking at how you're going to fund this degree, giving yourself as much time as you can to prepare is key. So at this point, I want to introduce again the alumni that have joined us. And Trevor's, just a great guy, and he said he'd go first. And then after Trevor, we're privileged to listen to Colleen, and then following Colleen, Jason. So again, thank you, Trevor.
Good evening. Thank you for being here, and thank you for having me. It's a true pleasure to be here. If I was to have asked you to predict what I would have said as soon as I stood up here, you probably would have thought, oh, he's going to say that he's happy to be here. It's a pretty common thing to say. I can't stress enough how truly pleased I am to be here, though. To give a little bit back to an institution that gave me so much is a true pleasure. When I was preparing to be here with you tonight, I had those 3 questions in front of me. And I started by sitting back and writing out my genuine answers without doing any research, I just sat with my thoughts and wrote out the answers. And before I finished my preparation, I decided I would look at the Royal Roads website to cross-reference and just see, if in fact, is my experience consistent with what they say on their website. And it was crazy to see how consistent it was. How my experience and everything I wrote down is exactly a mirror image of the promise that Royal Roads gives on their website. I want to speak briefly to the 3 questions you see in front of you. The first question is, what were your concerns? Well, the first concern I had before entering the BCom program in 1998, it would have been 1997 at the time, was return on investment. Will this time, energy, and money pay off for me in the future? I can say without a shadow of a doubt, yes, it did. And there were many tangible examples as to how that return on investment played out. Starting with the number of job interviews that I got coming out of Royal Roads, to the number of job offers I was given, to the look in the face of the people when they find out that you've attended Royal Roads University and all that goes along with this great institution. I don't have time to get into too many more. The point, though, is that there is a real return of an investment of my time and money. The second says, what was your residency like? Well, I lived off campus. I was here for the 12 months. So really what I want to speak to is what was my on-campus experience like. And the first word that jumps to mind is community. In everything I did on this campus, in every class, in every interaction, it was the relationships, it was the people, and it was the sense of community that really stood out. From the way that our program was structured, to the events that were held to bring everyone together, to being an alumni and all that goes along with the alumni community. There is a genuine sense of that on this campus, and it's something that I truly appreciate. What have you learned or taken away thus far? Well, there's three things that really jump to mind. When it comes to the experience at Royal Roads and what it gave to me, the first is that it provided me with a knowledge base in commerce to really give me the career that I've enjoyed in sales and marketing. It blended a lot of practical experience, not only from the professors that were brought in, but also from the projects that we did to help fortify the educational experience, again, to help give me a foundation to feel really strong when out in the marketplace. The second is relationships. There's a countless number of people that I still am in touch with as a result of the experience I had here. That is fellow classmates and faculty. And finally, confidence. My experience at Royal Roads was second to none. And I speak from a place of context in that I had a previous degree at University of Manitoba. And although that was a wonderful experience and I have a tremendous amount of respect for that institution, the experience here is truly second to none. The confidence that I have, I think, is the best part. It's given me the ability to feel good about carving my path in the career that I'm ultimately enjoying now. One thing I know for certain is that most of us here need to work to sustain our life. Having the confidence to be able to carve that path and go in the direction that we want is worth every little bit of investment into Royal Roads University. Thank you.
Well, I have a little bit of a different experience judging from doing both the on-campus and the online as well. So for my concerns for the beginning, when I first came to Royal Roads, the very first thing that pops into mind that I actually didn't tell Megan about was, well, the Bank of Mom and Dad no longer exists, so what am I going to do? So when I came to Royal Roads, what I did was I talked to everyone. I talked to the enrollment advisors. Once I did find out I was in, I was talking to the financial aid officers, and it was possible. Everything that I wanted to happen just fell into place. I don't know how it happened, but it just worked. So when I was doing my bachelor's, that was one of the major concerns that I had. When I was doing my master's as well, that popped up again, but I was lucky enough to do an international development program, which I got a grant for. So I actually spent 3 months of this year in northern Uganda, thanks to Royal Roads University. And then another concern that came up during my experience at Royal Roads was before this, I went to SAIT. So if anyone's from Calgary, it's a technical school. It's Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. And I'd never actually been to a post-secondary university level education before. I spent a student for a day with a friend of mine at the University of Calgary. And he was in a class of 400, and I sat in an English class, which absolutely turned me off of all universities for about 4 years. And then I spent some time in radio broadcasting and then decided to go back to school. And exactly like talking to the enrollment advisors and saying, hey, it works. Oh my gosh, like my 2 years at SAIT, who knew, talking on the radio and joking around, actually, my experience, it translated 100% into everything that I was learning in my bachelor's. So my residency, because I did experience both of them, I'll just briefly touch on each. The one for the bachelor's program, we kind of just hit the ground running, which was great because I like to be busy, and I like to feel pressure, and I like to know at the end of the day that I've done something and feeling that sense of accomplishment. And I think that was a huge motivator for me. So for my master's program, the residency was a little bit different, but it was a much richer experience. I was sitting in a classroom with the director of communications for Canadian Heritage, and he was actually getting BlackBerry messages about the trip of the Royals coming to Canada in the exact same class while I'm sitting next to an AIDS nurse that works on Hastings Street. So it was just absolutely amazing to be able to draw that into a group environment because so many people came from so many different backgrounds, and so that level of experience definitely made the residency real. And we did get emails from a friend of mine in Santa Barbara and then somebody else from Inuvik. I mean, you're trying to figure out a Skype time between, 5 different time zones. It really kind of pulls it all together and makes you realize what a global world we live in. And then what have I learned and taken away this far? Aside from 2 very nice pieces of paper on my wall, I've learned a lot about myself, a lot of personal growth. I've also learned that pretty much anything is possible. What else have I learned? I definitely, as Trevor was mentioning, I definitely value absolutely everything that I learned here. And I got the opportunity to do an international experience. And I also got the opportunity and the motivated team from Railroads. So with the alumni and the faculty and the staff, I was always the one asking questions. I was just like, can I do this through financial aid? Okay, it'll work. Okay, now I need a grant. And oh my God, I need to figure out these 10 papers. I was emailing librarians for research ideas all the time. And that's what they're there for. And I got 100% of them most of the time. So it was different than any of the university where you're sitting in a classroom and you're one of 400 people and I'm like, oh God, they wouldn't even notice I'm here. Here the teacher's like, wake up, because I know you. And I know you have a deadline. So it's really interactive, and I think it was a really great experience because they did know who I was, and they were also really invested in my future as well.
Hi, everybody. Jason Heflin again, and I was a class of 97 commerce in entrepreneurial management. And interesting, that was the very first class at Royal Rose. It was now just a private university. Oddly enough, I'd looked at this place when it was military. Public university. Well, there we go. And this has got to be one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I could play with this all day. I just might just do that. It's going on my desk. I think the 2 speakers before me, you're never supposed to follow a communication speaker when you're going to do a talk. First of all, I don't really have notes either. But I just jotted down a few things that sort of resonated with me. And the very first thing I can say is I had a very unusual path even getting to the school. I think you almost have to have I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up, and hearing from sort of the audience a little bit, I think there's a little bit of that out there as well. One thing I answer question number 3 right away is one of the things that Investors Group gave me was a path. You never know when your path is when you're going to find that path. Did I have any concerns? You bet I did. First of all, I did my first year of college twice. It was a lot of fun. Didn't know what I wanted to be, right? So met a lot of great people. I'm from Nelson, BC, a small town in the interior. I don't know if you've ever been there, but everyone knows everyone. Couldn't wait to get out of there, and I think it reflected in my scores in my first year of college. So I moved to Vancouver, and I just did some work. I just head down. I was a grocery boy at K-Von Foods in Burnaby, and about 2 years into that experience, I was asked to become a manager. And it was at that point that I kind of realized that the next raise really was the last raise. And it was also a unionized job. Not that that's a bad thing, but the owner, Jimmy Patterson, was trying to break the union, and the writing was on the wall for that place. So I decided I'm going to go to school. I applied to two things that I thought would interest me at Langara College. One was international business, and the other was journalism. I didn't get into journalism. I got into international business, and that's where my path starts. Really enjoyed that, and then I figured out it was a Pacific Rim Studies, and now I'm going to go teach English in Japan, and maybe meet do some marketing and get to know some people over there. Maybe see if I can start up a marketing company or import-export business. Discovered that you have to have your undergrad. Well, in 1996, after 2 years of what I think to be pretty good college, head down, tail up, while working, and getting really good grades because all of a sudden you're motivated when it's your own money, I decided that I'm going to apply to commerce. And I applied to UVic, UBC. Both accepted me, and they were very nice, and they would have put me in my second year. And I think within sort of a week of that, Royal Roads came to on campus and they did a talk, and they explained how their commerce program worked, and I just went, sign me up. I'm in. Head down, tail up for a year. I can do that. I had, oddly enough, I had enough savings to sort of kind of get me through that year. I did come out with some student debt, and that was my primary concern. What was your main concern? Student debt. Absolutely. I think I had $8,000 that I managed to save up, and that was going to get me to about halfway point, and that was back in '96. The other thing that I was concerned about was it was a first-year university. I was a little bit worried that what was going to happen for the years after. The paper on the wall, I wanted it to have some meaning. I mean, I did put a lot of money into it. And I was thrilled in successive classes of how well they've done. And some of the people that I've met over the years from Royal Roads, and just the types of businesses that they're in and some of the things they're doing, absolutely phenomenal. And I network with them all the time. In fact, I've hired about 6 of them myself. My on-campus experience, I didn't stay on campus. I was an on-campus learner. It was, we rented a house. I rented a house with a Peruvian, a Dutch guy from Aruba, and a Polish guy, actually. And that might sound like a joke, but that was literally, we were the international house. We had some amazing parties. But the on-campus experience was phenomenal because we were treated really, really well. The educators, the instructors, the professors that came to us, to this day, I'm still amazed that I got to meet Charles Priester. Talk about my path again. Had no interest in finance, really, growing up, and then all of a sudden I meet an amazing professor and get really interested in finance. Just like you, I could not stand accounting. Management accounting, just, whoa. And then I met another really interesting guy, Richard Wildman, and he was the entrepreneurship professor here. And he really got me thinking that I wanted to own my own business or be in business for myself. And so that's my path. What I take away? The path, obviously. Ability to work under pressure, you bet. We used to have a bit of a team building exercise when you first started in commerce. I don't know if they still do that, but that was pretty cool. But from there on out, it was you're going. Ability to work in a team, ability to lead. Actually, I think that Royal Roads helped me find my voice. Good belief in myself and just sort of a bit of an inner strength. Friends for life. I think Trevor, like. The people that I graduated with in '97 have all gone on to amazing careers, and they're all over the world, and they're all on my LinkedIn, and they're all on Facebook, and been to each other's weddings and that sort of thing. And the other big thing that it got me was a wife and 2 kids, and amazing career, obviously, and I got to stay in Victoria. I had never been to Victoria until I came here. And I gotta say, like, we live in quite possibly one of the most amazing places in one of the most amazing countries in the world, and you don't realize how lucky you are to do that until you're almost forced to leave. So that's what I took out of my Royal Roads experience, and thank you very much for having me.
It's hard to follow that. We're running a little short of time, but I have something exciting to share with you. I alluded to the fact that over the last 2.5 years, we've been looking at the Royal Roads brand, who we are as an institution since, way back in that beginning inaugural Bachelor of Commerce class in '97. So since 1995, we've had some growth, we've experienced some change, and as a part of this discovery, talking to our alumni and the students that study with us, to the community at Royal Roads, our faculty, staff, really trying to get a sense of, are we still who we think we are? Are we who we think we are? Are we selling this institution for what it is? And we have some pretty exciting functional attributes as to why you would choose this university. The fact you can study while you work. You can come and do accelerated undergraduate programs, but really didn't tap into, and I really appreciate what you said, Trevor, who we are and what you take away. And over that 2.5 years, we found that there is something unique about who we are, and I'm just going to share with you a bit of a PR campaign. We launched the new revised Royal Roads University brand in June, and as a part of that, had a number of stunts that we did in Vancouver in the Lower Mainland, across Canada, through the Globe and Mail. You might have did anybody see our wrap on the Times Colonist? It made you think, right? I mean, some people said, what's wrong with you guys? This didn't print properly, until you read the fine print and realize ingenuity, it's an attribute we admire. We wanted you to be able to bring it together. So this next little stunt, this next piece is something we did at the Broad Street station in Vancouver. That's just one taste. If you mind bringing it back. I, as I mentioned, graduated in 2003. Sorry, I'm back to where you guys graduated from. And one of the questions I had for the president at that time was, it's wonderful to see the growth, to see where we're going as an institution, but how are you going to market my degree? And I can't stand up here and feel more proud to be associated with this institution after this process. Because I truly feel that the world, it's not a secret anymore, this wonderful place we've been able to study. The world is starting to see truly who Royal Roads University is. So with that, thank you for joining us for this part of the presentation. I want to leave you with a thought, and that is that Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. So where do you start, right? Think about what you need in your life. We're here for the next little bit. We're going to ask you to grab some warm hors d'oeuvres and come back to your seats, but please, we'll be around to ask some questions if you have anything personal that you would like to ask us, and we'll reconvene at 7:30 for Dr. Brian White, who's going to be talking about Salt Spring Island and sustainability and the retirement plan there. So really interactive presentation, so you can get a sense of what it's like to learn at Royal Roads. So thank you. If you're sitting on the outside, if this table here in the front is available, we're going to do a bit of a workshop, so it'll be nice to be a little closer. Do you ladies mind coming over a little closer for Dr. Brian White? Thank you for coming, those that just arrived, and for those that have stayed. This part of the evening is probably my favorite, maybe because I'm done speaking to you, but also because it connects me back to the learning at Royal Roads and to different areas of expertise at Royal Roads. And at this point, we have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Brian White. And Dr. White has a myriad of different experiences to share, but certainly most recently he's just published a book, so I hope you'll tell us a little bit about that and a little bit more about your background. And at this point, please join me in welcoming Dr. Brian White. This is for you, huh?
Okay, good, thanks. Nice to be here. Just had to do an eat and run for my master's degree of tourism management students who are just doing their final session in the castle at the moment. So that was kind of fun. So I got dessert before I came in, then I had appies afterwards, which is, I just love that. That's so cool. Anyway, thank you, Megan, and welcome, and I'm pleased to be here. I'm going to talk about Salt Spring Island. Now, as you probably noticed, I'm relatively old, right? Okay, so I'm one of those elderly persons. Mature. There's all kinds of possible things you can say, right? I see myself as just sort of cresting over being middle-aged and sliding off into that indeterminate other zone of being old, right? And my wife says, who's younger than me, it often happens with professors actually, but what she says is, well, you're not really old, you just sort of could become old if you don't watch it. Okay? So, I'll give you a little bit of background on why I'm here. I'm actually supposed to be retired. I was at Capilano University for 37 years, and I've been here for 5 years, right? So you can do the math. It works out, I think, approximately to the point where I've been teaching for 42 years. Now, my background, actually, was I started out as a juvenile delinquent. And that was actually quite a good start, because it gave me a certain confidence to actually go forward and brazenly bluff my way past all kinds of police interviews and various other things before I was actually forced to join Scouts. Okay? Once I became a Boy Scout, I found that it was actually, my passion was the out of doors, and eventually I actually went to, I didn't do well in school actually, I was put back a year, but eventually I did graduate from high school, Delbrook, with Margaret Trudeau in the class, and Margaret Sinclair, she was then, same year. We won't go too many details about that, but what I did do was I went on to become a logging engineer, of all things. And I worked for Tassa's company for several years to put myself through school. And I went through Simon Fraser University and got in on a special entry because I had out 20, out 30, and out 91 in 1 year to actually get my major, right? So I snuck in and managed to get through that, and then went on to a master's degree in geography after working in the woods and going back and forth to school. So every summer, I would have short, crew-cut hair and no beard, right? In the winter, ponytail, right? It took a while to grow, but you know, by the time I went back, I had it all off. So I had this schizophrenic early adulthood, which led me to my current perspective on life in British Columbia, which is that we have, you know, several solitudes of expectation about what this province is supposed to be, what communities are supposed to be, and what the place is actually for, and how we're supposed to live in it in a sustainable and respectful way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in terms of the findings I've got in Salt Spring Island. I've been, originally I was head of the outdoor recreation program at Capilano. I have my 40-year anniversary coming up this year. In February we're having our 40th anniversary. I started the program in '72 there, and eventually then in the mid-'80s I started the tourism program at Capilano, and then the tourism degree program, and eventually I did a lot of the work which led Capilano to becoming a university. So I did a lot of the analysis work on that. And when I came here, I was going to retire to Salt Spring Island, right? Here I come, I've got my time in, I can retire and raise terrestrial orchids, right? Cool. And then they offered me this job here, or asked me to apply for it. And I thought, should I do this? Okay. So instead we moved to East Souk, which is another story in itself. It's a cool place. I've got acreage out there and I've got a garden and having a good time. I love this place and I really enjoy being here, and I really enjoy the fact that we've got students from all over Canada who say the same thing. So we've got a really interesting opportunity here, and I hope I have a chance to discuss this with you as we go along. My particular role is I'm the director of the School of Tourism and Hospitality. We have an excellent group of faculty. Some of you might remember Rod Harris, who is chief executive, who is the CEO for Tourism British Columbia, who's one of our faculty members now, after he had a bit of a dust up over the Olympics with Gordon Campbell. Then we have Rob Gillaretto, who is the CEO for Tourism Victoria, who was teaching in my class yesterday, is one of our instructors. Bill Lewis from Magnolia Hotel. A number of different really key, really exciting people who work here who are in the industry. So we're networked like crazy. This particular piece, this particular presentation, deals with something interesting about southern Vancouver Island. What it deals with is this whole idea of what the island actually means and what it's supposed to be. And when it says tourism and retirement migration, it sounds like just a real snoozer, right? Like, oh man, you know, how boring can you get? But it's actually not. It's actually a really fascinating subject because it is so much dealing with about who we are on southern Vancouver Island. It's a really interesting subject. And I went to Salt Spring partly because I was still wondering if I should have actually retired there after all, and partly because I had several friends there. How many of you don't remember, none of you, no, you don't remember the 60s, do you? Okay. Okay, let me tell you. In the 60s, I do remember some of it. You know, it isn't, if you were there, you don't remember it. You probably heard that quote. But some of my friends bailed out of university in 67, 68, and they moved to either the Kootenays or to Salt Spring Island, right? And they had teepees and long hair and communes, and resulted in a whole different cultural milieu as a result of moving over there. And I've often wondered what happened to them. Well, when I was doing my research up here, I bumped into a couple of them. And they seemed to be doing pretty good, you know? Not sure what they were growing, but whatever it was, it seems to have made them a few bucks, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about expectations, about landscapes, about dreams and ambitions as we go through this presentation. See how it comes out. Okay. Which button do I push? That one, I guess. Aha, good. So, first of all, this is a cold water island. Has anyone ever swum in the Gulf Islands? Oh, it's cold. Oh, you only ever do it once, that's right. Never again. It's freezing, freezing cold. It gets this big whoosh of water coming through with the tides twice a day, and it's bloody cold. So it's a cold water island, right? And cold water islands have issues, just like tropical islands, about sustainability, about ecosystem management, about the economies of the island, which are often quite unusual. And they have a series of issues which are driven by what people expect to find and to be provided on these islands. And Salt Spring is very similar to many other cold water islands. For example, in Sweden, places like that, where there's similar situations with similar problems as we have in the Gulf Islands here. If you go to the American Gulf Islands, same thing. Okay? So it's a very interesting point. You've got population displacement, you've got a problem, which we'll go into a little bit with that. You've got tourism impacts. An island is a finite space. It doesn't have a lot of flexibility in terms of what it can accommodate and handle, even an island as big as Salt Spring. Gentrification, which means I moved to the island, and I just sold my place in North Vancouver, right? For an obscene amount of money, right? And I can buy up this big chunk of the island, waterfront, whatever, with my money I just got from a very expensive place someplace else, right? So you go in there, and somebody is sitting there and wants to sell. So you buy it. And after a while, if this keeps repeating itself, you get a situation where the population is replaced. You've got a different kind of population, different expectations, different lifestyle, and the original working population that was there gets eroded. Okay, so we'll talk about that. And finally, governance. Whoa. I was like walking in, I've never seen anything like it. I walked in there and they invited me over to talk about island municipal government. And I thought, okay, I'll be there, no problem. Boy, I thought I'd been blown out of the water. You know, people sitting there scowling. I felt like, you know, I'd gone in there with this, like I was proposing to you know, do something terrible to the island. And then I found out that there was this enormous divide, and that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about. What is the governance appropriate to an island? So it's an interesting point. So anyway, moving along, what have you got in the way of issues there? Well, certainly key issues. Competition for scarce resources like water. Salt Spring Island has got water issues. Anyone ever see the film Chinatown?
Yes.
Okay, with Faye, is it
Faye Dunaway.
and Faye Dunaway, was it?
debate anyways.
Yeah. Okay, and it was about water, over the corruption around water supply in Los Angeles and in California, right? Well, everywhere there's a place where you don't have a stable water supply, southern Vancouver Island, you know, what's happening with the Pumpledge River right now, and the Carriacou, you've got a situation where there's often competition and politics and intrigue around water, okay? Salt Spring is no different with that. Land conversion for residential and commercial development. We have a thing called the Agricultural Land Reserve in BC, which has protected our tiny, tiny amount of agricultural land for many years. But it gets eroded. It's being eroded fairly steadily by developers who want to build some kind of residential development. So that's become an issue in BC. Only 2% of our land is really good quality agricultural resource, right? So we need to hang on to that and not have it converted to residential. Gated communities. Okay, a gated community is a place where you can only get in if you can get through the gate, right? Okay, so it isn't often seen as a place where people are contributing to the well-being of the larger community. At least that's the perception of a lot of people who have to live near gated communities. However, the people inside them think they're great. Locals forced to emigrate by rising land and gentrification. Yes, you look out and you see that long line of ancient cars gradually working their way down from the hills, pulling their U-hauls, heading for the ferry to go and live in Wally or whatever. I mean, okay, it's not that bad, I agree. But, you know, you get the general idea that people are being displaced because of rising prices, because they can sell their land at a really good price and move someplace else. Okay? So, gentrification is that process of increased value of a scarce resource, namely land on an island, which leads to the locals being, after maybe several generations, being forced to move. Okay, and finally, unoccupied investment properties and second homes. There's a term for the unoccupied properties, which are for sale by Sotheby's on the island, right? You see all the signs Sotheby's, right? Okay, well, there's a reason why Sotheby's is there. It's because it's very valuable waterfront property in many cases, and luxury resorts. Most of them are unoccupied. There's nobody home. This is known as the Black Windows Syndrome. And southern Vancouver Island, where I live, out in East Souk, same thing. All the waterfronts are unoccupied. Nobody's there. Nobody's home. It's a big impact. So we'll talk about that. Okay, there it is, Salt Spring Island. The large ring around it. And you'll notice that it has, it's the one island that's got sort of bulk. It's bigger than the other islands. And it's bigger, it has more access from ferries, it's got a more diversified economy, it's got almost 10,000 people living on it, right? 10,000 people. That's pretty big, that's a lot of people. It's actually got population density, okay? And that 10,000 people have arrived in the last 10 to 15 years, most of them, right? Okay, so, and it's a place where we on Southern, how many people actually go over to Salt Spring once in a while? You know, yeah, exactly, okay, so we all go over there for various reasons. You know, like, we like to go over there to go to my friend Russ Fraser's Thimble Farm on the north end of the island, because I trade orchids with him, right? My wife goes over there. Huh?
The market.
Fantastic market. You got the market. You've got. It's the only place I know you can buy prayer flags, right? Yeah, and you can still get a really nice tie-dye shirt there.
Yeah, Apple Festival.
Apple Festival. Well, a bit of a problem. It didn't quite happen this year, I don't think.
Did it not? Oh.
No. But most of the time, the Apple Festival is great, yes. And it's just a really nice place to be, isn't it? It's just great. Okay, so it's a place we all love, and it's a place which has a certain sort of spiritual integrity, right? It's something that there's something about the island which people tend to like and which they tend to appreciate, possibly driven by the long history on it. There's me and my dog on the island, the largest of the Gulf Islands. Longest history. Does anyone know the story of some of the earliest settlers? It's very interesting.
Hawaiians.
There was Kanakas, Hawaiians there. Yes, that's right. And the other group that were there were black Americans who came up as escaped slaves. were settled there. It's a very good book on it you might want to read if you're interested in Salt Spring, called Go Do Some Great Thing. And it's about the early black settlers on the island. And it's written by a gentleman named, a good friend of mine, Crawford Killian. Very good. He's the guy that also founded the Chinook website, by the way, the company. Population in Salt Springs increased due to amenity migration. Here's an interesting idea. If you can live anywhere in the world, where would you live? Think about it. Vegas? No. Detroit? Probably not. Okay? You can do your business, you can survive anywhere in the world. Where would you live? Where would you like to live? Think about it. Where's the best place on earth? Hint, hint. Remember what Gordo said that, you know, we're going to change it from supernatural BC to the best place on earth, right? And everyone was so embarrassed. Like, it's so un-Canadian to do that. Oh, just awful. Anyway. So, what you've got here is a situation where amenity migration, people are moving to Salt Spring Island because it's a great place to live. And it isn't just about retiring to Salt Spring Island, it's moving there because it's a great place to live. It's wonderful. Nowadays, all you need is high-speed internet access. That's it. And you're on your way for a lot of jobs. Lots of business can be done that way. If you look at the people commuting there, they commute occasionally because they live on the island and they do their business on the internet. It's definitely attracted a whole different type of person there. And some of the semi-retired people of my generation who have retired, they're still consulting, they're still engaged, they're still doing a few gigs a year, right? Like I've got 2 or 3 friends that live over there who do exactly that. I've got friends who are writers, there's artists, there's a whole community of people that don't really want to work 9 till 5. They do want a quality lifestyle. So there they go. 52% of the population there now is retired. They define themselves as retired. And that's a very interesting percentage. So it's old. You know, these people have been there, they've done their work, they've lived elsewhere, they've got money they've made elsewhere, and they've come to the island. And they don't like change. Right? Okay. So, you've got a small business-based economy. You've got some of the best entrepreneurs I've ever seen on Salt Spring Island. They're cool. They're people who have got passion, they've got vision, they're doing things. They may be artists who are doing beautiful artwork, wood carvings, paintings, pottery, all kinds of different kinds of artists and artisans. There's a great place to buy goat cheese, right? Salt Spring, dairies. You've even got the spin-off of a situation of Salt Spring coffee. Now, I have not seen any coffee plantations in Salt Spring Island, right? But it doesn't matter because the brand, Salt Spring, is resonant all the way through southern British Columbia, isn't it? Or through BC. Salt Spring coffee, of course. Yes, Salt Spring coffee. Do they do anything on Salt Spring Island? No. But there's still Salt Spring coffee. So think about the branding. Think about that vision or that idea. There's an idea of the island that people buy into. The economic downturn has impacted retirees, businesses, and developers focused on retirement properties. So you've had this pressure downward and a slowing down all the way through southern BC. The people to talk to about this are bankers. Bankers are really interesting people. They're not like you and I. Okay? Bankers are different. And they talk in different terms and they have different priorities. But what they will tell you is whether they are going to lend you money to buy that property and develop it. And you can bet that the answer these days is nyet. They're not going to. The reason is they don't think they're going to get a substantial return. They're not going to be able to sell the property. What happened to the Vancouver housing market in the last few months? What's the percentage drop? You want to know? 5%. It's gone down. Not much, but enough to make a difference. It's dropped.
Feels like more.
Yeah. Well, if you live in East Souk, I can tell you it's dropped a hell of a lot more than that. You know, it really has. But it's something to think about. The other thing is what's happened with the price of ferry traffic. It's gone up, going up. And it's partly because it's a great place to live. It's a really fascinating area. And you move up this continuum. Tourism is the first encounter with a different vision of what your life could be. So, Salt Spring Island is a classic for that, right? And so people on Salt Spring have competing visions of who and what the place is supposed to be and what they're going to do with it. Very interesting. If you're close to the tottering, gradually off the end of the mortal coil, as it were, then your interests in having an entrepreneurial, vital, exciting, and meaningful, rapid changing environment are probably somewhat limited, right? I'm finding that myself, as a matter of fact, at this point. But anyway, you get the idea. If you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s or something, you may want to do something new. And that's where you start to get this generational conflict going on about what the place means and what you should have as your priorities. Now, there's other factors that come into that, and I'll bring those in a little while. Long-distance commuting, a big deal as consultants. I've got 4 neighbors in East Suit where I live who do exactly that. They're gone for months at a time, and then they're back for months at a time. Okay? So work and life balance is changing rapidly. So that gives you a model of how migration starts to happen, how long-distance commuting turns into a different set of expectations about life. And Salt Spring Island is a really good example of this phenomenon. Now, what about the workers? What about people that actually work in the mills? Well, BC, as you might have noticed, is really moving away from a resource-based sector for decades now. I mean, I started as a logging engineer, and my last friend in the logging industry just retired recently, which is quite something. He made it through past 60. Of the 5 or 6 guys who all went out together in the bus and the crummy to start in Gold River, there are 2 of us still alive. The others either died from alcohol poisoning or accidents. The others were all killed by accidents. So the resource-based economy that we had, which used to employ everyone, disappeared a long time ago. Fishing, logging, mining, and to some extent farming, although that's engaged in a resurgence right now. So, what's the blue-collar job on Salt Spring Island? Does anyone know? It's the mill, Crofton Mill. They commute back and forth. But that mill doesn't employ many people, and Catalyst is on very shaky grounds in terms of its future, right? So pulp mills, it's going to be hard to keep an economy going on around the pulp mills because the cost of production here is so high. Fishing and logging have been in decline. Service economy is the major employer, but many of the front-line jobs are low paid. So what you get is a situation of professionals being kind of the people with the best income who are telecommuting or do occasional gigs, and they go out and do different jobs, which is what I was planning to do if I had moved to Salt Spring Island. I would have continued to do teaching, a gig here, a gig at UVic, supervise a couple of graduate students here, you know, do a couple of guest lectures here and there, do some consulting for different clients. I could do okay. I could write it all off, right? Okay, so times have changed. Now let's take a look at a map of the island as a perception map. This map is a map of arts and crafts opportunities on the island, and it's dense. That's what Salt Spring has become famous for. Now the problem you're running into is in order to keep all of these arts and crafts going, there's lots and lots of artists and artisans on the island, there's also a tendency for people to work off island, and I mentioned the online work as well. So people are doing these combinations of different types of work. And the artists are often small business people, right? And the problem that you run into is the sustainability of their jobs in terms of the governance apparatus which they're in. They would like to have a municipality. They'd like to have a business, maybe a business tax situation. They'd like to upgrade and improve the business environment on the island. And there's a lot of problems that work against that. So that's one of the reasons they invited me over there to talk about governance and the development of an island municipality. And like I said, I got to a certain extent blown out of the water, okay? Because a lot of the retirees were really opposed to it, really opposed, like really quite strongly opposed. So I didn't exactly get run off the island and tarred and feathered, but there was a lot of people there who would quite cheerfully have done that, I suspect. So when you look at this map here, you're looking at the tourist reality of cultural tourism. So cultural tourism is traveling for arts and heritage, and the island is perfectly set up for that. Agritourism, wine tourism, arts and crafts-based tourism, special events like the Apple Festival, those kinds of things. The problem you run into is not the present level that it's at now isn't quite big enough and volume enough There's not enough volume there to make it really sustainable because of the ferries. The ferries don't have enough scheduling and they're too expensive. And that's been a big issue. So, no local government. It's under the Capital Regional District and the Islands Trust. The Islands, it's a land use planning agency, but it's not a local government agency. But that's the way it's serving. That's what it's doing. The good news about the Islands Trust is it's keeping the island as intact as it possibly can in terms of a quality environment and looking after the heritage and the cultural landscape of the island. Excuse me. But there's a lot of pressure for island municipal status, and yet the last time it was voted on, which is actually about 8 years ago now, 7 years ago, was rejected by 73% of the population. If you've ever tried to hold a referendum in an environment where there's a high percentage of retirees, what do you think is, who's going to come out and vote? Right. Okay, the retirees come out to vote, big time. Like they're all organized and they vote. So everyone pours out and floods the place, and all the other people who aren't retirees who would like to have this done get out voting. And that's what's happening, and that's what would probably happen again if they tried it again. So it's a conundrum, and so you're getting a frozen situation economically. It doesn't necessarily say that if you've got an island municipal status that the place would suddenly be flooded with subdivisions and developers. That's not the case at all, because the Capital Regional District still has a great deal of control, and so the Islands Trust would still have a lot of control there, right, over the land use. So that's not to happen. What hasn't happened is, of course, we don't want a tax increase on the island, which probably would happen. That's the biggest single issue. And of course, it's the only place in the world with sheep island fuels, which is pretty cool. So it's got a certain eccentricity, which is absolutely charming and delightful. So the thing that's really interesting is the retirement community doesn't like tourism. I got this in my questionnaires I did. Agriculture, absolutely, everyone loves that. Small sheep farming, bed and breakfast, small resorts. But the bed and breakfast and small resorts, how many people have stayed in a small resort in Salt Spring Island? Okay, they haven't upgraded. Like they're still kind of ratty little places. There's a few really nice luxury places like Hastings House. A lot of them are really run down. Why? Anyone know why? Why would they not reinvest?
You don't have to.
You don't have to. And they haven't put their rates up, right? So you can still afford to stay there. But they're not allowed to sell their land. They can't sell it to a big developer to have it changed into a resort or something large scale, right? So it's maintained the quality and the overall ambience of the place. But some of the Chamber of Commerce would say it's slowed down any kind of development. So that's your trade-off. Gary Oates Vineyard, 1880? I don't think so. I think 1880 is when the land was set aside as an agricultural area. It wasn't a vineyard then.
An orchard.
An orchard, that's right. Exactly. So really important tourist attraction, very, very successful, and some darn good wine. Very nice wine. The cheese can bankrupt you because it's quite expensive, okay? Salt Spring Island cheese. My wife on the left here is about to spend $60 on cheese, okay? Which I thought, oh, you did what? It's really good cheese, dear, and I don't complain, it's fine. And it wasn't even that much cheese, but it was good, it's really nice. So quality products, high value, high quality products were a critical factor on the island. And the Salt Spring cheese making operation is quite famous internationally. It's very, very good. They do these cheese tastings, which are really kind of neat. And their goats are definitely happy. Okay, happy goats. So, and there they are, the prayer flags and the tie-dye, right? There it is. But of course, it's become commodified now, right? So it isn't just a matter of the old hippies. They're now rich old hippies, done okay. At the very least, they've managed to hang in there. So you've got an alternative lifestyle which has become a tourist attraction. It's something which is commodified, but on the other hand, it's charming and it's kind of fun. It's certainly something I enjoy when I go over there to visit. Now, here's a retirement landscape. Channel Ridge is at the north end of the island, and the whole place was set aside and organized as a major retirement housing development with very expensive houses. Now, it got stopped in its tracks by a concerted effort to slow it down. Now, I don't know if it's ever going to go ahead or what's going to happen. I think it's just sitting there waiting for the recession to end. But what happened there was it was able to come in because of some some things about the land management practices there on the land designation, and it was able to actually get started by protecting agricultural land, but at the same time building up on the forested, they wanted to build in the forested areas. It caused an enormous fuss on Salt Spring, and I think it's actually been brought to a halt at the time being. But really, there was what happened is forest land was being sold to developers, and that it's not farmland, it's forest land, and the adjacent farmland was kept as an amenity for the development. So that kind of development is happening all through southern British Columbia, or was happening. It's come to a halt as a result of the recession. It just isn't happening much anymore. You're getting much more concentrated developments, like the new Colwood Corners development. You've got 5,000 people going into it, right? In a single location. So for those of you who live in the western communities, you think the Colwood Corners is bad, you wait till that thing gets finished. In this case, you've got issues with very expensive properties going in, which are not waterfront, and as the prices drop, available waterfront which have been held as investment properties go on the market and outcompete these big retirement centers so they don't sell. Okay, so emerging issues, just to finish up here. Land development is equated with tourism by some. It's not really, because it's retirement amenity migration, but that's how it's seen. The Islands Trust is seen as a protector and stopping development. Emerging tourism economy is not supported as the basic economic reality of the islands. The tourism economy is what keeps a lot of these things going. That plus the commuters, highly paid professionals who move on and off the island, and so on. These people are not seen as being the foundation for the economic life of the island. And yet that's what it is. It's a service-based economy then. And I would include agriculture in that because it's a high-value kind of product which has been put forward. Sheep farming, you've got some agricultural, some crops there like herb farming and that kind of thing. But really, and of course vineyards, but really the biggest single piece is that it's a tourist economy. And finally, there's no municipal grants available because there's no municipality. If you get better money going into Bowen Island, which is an island municipality, and you get going into Salt Spring. So Bowen Island has actually done not a bad job of development.
It was the same thing on Bowen, though, when they went to develop the Rogers sugar family. They owned all of Roger
That's
Curtis
right.
up that way. Same thing, they shut it down and said,
That's right.
now that we're here, close the door sort of thing.
Well, they did shut it down, yeah, but it's under the Islands Trust as well, right? So just because you get an island municipality doesn't mean to say that you're going to have rampant development going on everywhere. You won't. It doesn't work that way. So here's what I came up with. The population is seriously divided. Well, yeah. Okay. And the vision of the islands is very divided. People have all different visions of what the islands are supposed to be. Local control and accountability is seen by a very important, by some as a very important, is very important to effective ecosystem and sustainable tourism planning and development approvals. So the whole thing about local accountability is a big issue because it's not locally accountable. The Islands Trust is not about Salt Spring Island. There's a couple of directors from Salt Spring on the Islands Trust. It's actually off-island. And the other thing is the off-island part of managing Salt Spring is also with the Capital Regional District. So the regional district is like where I live in East Souk. I don't have a municipality either. There's one director, Mike Hicks, who runs the whole operation with an advisory panel. That's it. There's no municipal, there's no mayor, there's no council, nothing. So it's not terribly democratic on the island here. And some people love it that way. It's perfect because nothing is going to happen. So the economy and landscape is very vulnerable because of the off-island land use policy control. And that was demonstrated with the Channel Reach experience where an off-island developer was able to slide in, take advantage of some gaps and loopholes, and put in a massive development. Okay, it didn't go anywhere, just like the Rogers family didn't go anywhere. But still, you get a situation where it can be a bit dodgy and it's difficult. What happens if it does go ahead? And all of a sudden the whole place changes in its character and personality. And that's something that they were really afraid of on the island. So those are my observations. The ferry thing is huge there. People are obsessed with ferries on the island, absolutely obsessed with it. It's a constant conversation, right? And I don't know if it'll go away anytime soon because I don't know what they can do to make it different. Yeah? Pardon?
It's going to get worse.
It's probably going to get worse, yeah. The ferries on the island is going to be a big, big issue over the next while because there isn't the money to replace the fleet. And the ridership is dropping quite substantially. So, suggestions, solutions. What do you think? What do you think we should do with Salt Spring Island? What would you recommend? I don't have any answers at the moment.
Build a bridge.
Build a bridge.
And get over it.
What do you think? Any ideas? Any suggestions about what could be done? Because it's a very interesting topic.
Well, whatever the suggestions are, a lot of them would apply to Victoria City itself, I think.
Yes, they would. The thing about Salt Spring, it's a microcosm of who we are. It's a little concentrated piece of southern Vancouver Island and Gulf Island life. It's this concentrated thing where all of the issues of the whole region are concentrated on this one little island. And where Salt Spring goes, I think there we all go, to the southern part of Vancouver Island. It's just a thought I have. Well, I don't have an answer for this. And I've studied it. I wasn't hired. I just went in there as an academic to look at the situation. I did surveys. I did interviews. I came up with as much empirical data as I could to come up with these conclusions. I'm not going to bore you with all my graphs and charts and everything else, okay? But there's a lot of research that went into this. So what do you think? As a group of people that are from here, what would you suggest?
Transportation is crucial to it.
Sorry?
Transportation.
Yeah. Sure it is.
And the old thing about the highway system and, well, I mean, I was born in Victoria and get my shoulders up when people say out west. Well, out of what? Because I'm from here, so I can go.
Okay, that's a good point. How many people in this room were born in Victoria? Okay.
Oh.
But I came back because it is the best place.
But at least you left.
I've lived in Toronto, I've lived in Tokyo, I've been all around the world, but this
Okay.
is the best place.
That's a very interesting point. Let's just ask, where were people born? Ontario. Okay. The prairies. Okay. Maritime provinces. Outside the country. Okay. Me too. Okay, so it brings up the whole point that most people move west, either because your parents made you, or because you chose to, right? Or because there was some reason for coming out here. So we've got a society of people who have an expectation about a place. And this place, of course, is loaded with expectations. The one thing about this place is everyone has expectations, right? We're all expected to do something for us. And we want to have an opportunity to do something to make our own lives worthwhile while we're here. Because on Salt Spring it becomes really passionate and really, really engaging when people are talking this way. So what would you suggest? What would you suggest Salt Spring Islanders should do? Any ideas? Yeah.
If I understand this correctly, if Salt Spring Island chose to become a municipality, the island's land trust would still be able to put the brakes on any kind of
Yes.
development as they saw fit. Is that
They
right?
would, because they have the legislation which manages land use. Yes, exactly.
Right.
They
So
would.
then to me, it makes sense to form a municipality so that you can get business going in, you can manage the business, you can encourage development and economical sustainability while at the same time the land trust is there to look out for your cultural and your environmental sustainability, so why not do that?
Well, yes. That's exactly what I said.
Brian, you need a stronger sales team.
It's part of it.
Because it's education for them to realize what you just said is not a threat. Having a
Yeah.
municipality
That's right.
appears to be a threat. So
Yeah.
educating them on really the process, starting obviously with the
Yeah, but
retirees, because they don't have a need like the rest of the
No.
population does to sustain themselves.
That's right.
They're-
That's part of it. Is exactly it. If you have have an income which is an independent income, which isn't related to productivity in the place you live, then your attitude about what governance is there is going to be very different, isn't it? Than if you're a small business person struggling to make a living, from the business that you get in the place you live.
Until your vitality of living as a retiree, you no longer have those resources around you or the community
Right.
around
That's
you
right.
to support your lifestyle. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to-
There's
That's right.
parallel, but it's also, I think education is important. Well, we're learning, some of us know a bit more about it maybe than others, but this is a pattern, I mean, demographic pattern
Yeah.
that's happened in Venice, Italy, or Sausalito, California. These things have happened before, so if people can see, as well, fortunately, life is longer and healthier for most of the population, but if you can see how some things can be extrapolated, or parallels could be made from
Yeah.
other communities, then maybe they could see the writing on the wall that their version of their future in this idyllic paradise maybe has to be modulated.
It could be. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to convince someone because a lot of these people are still hale and hearty and they're doing just fine, and they don't want their taxes to go up, right? If you're on a fixed income, the big fear is that your expenses are going to rise, right? So you don't want to have that happen. And I look at my number of retirees around my area, and now if you want to go find them, they are working at Costco because they didn't realize that the costs would go up so high, so they have to go back to work. So here's a 75-year-old medical doctor working stocking shelves at Costco, right? And that's their big fear. In many cases, people are afraid of what could happen to them, and they may not be able to find a job at Costco because there is no Costco on Solomon Island, right? This is why everyone moves there. So that's a real conundrum. The other thing is the taxes would go up. If you had a municipality, the taxes would go up quite a bit. They would. There's no question about that. So then it becomes an issue of the balance of the population. Would you have more people moving in there who are young, vital, pioneering, enthusiastic entrepreneurs? Probably not. Okay? Why? Where are they going? Where are people like that living?
Where vitality lies.
Well, you've got work and jobs and
Yeah.
We're going to need
opportunities.
schools for children. And
Schools? That's another thing, yeah. Where are you going to live? You're going to live in a town or a city where those things are likely to be, you've got more possibilities of making a living. Any other ideas, though? I really need the ideas on this one.
I got a question about
Yeah.
the ferry. Do you pay both ways, or is it like Pender where you pay one way and then
One way.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they've already.
Either way, you pay,
Yeah.
right? And the thing there is that you can, they're cutting back on the inter-island ferry traffic as part of their traffic reorganization on the ferries, right? And that's a problem too. So you look at Galliano Island or Main Island, and I did a workshop on Main Island for tourism there. Their attitude is completely different. I couldn't believe it because they don't have as many retirees on Main Island. They don't. It's quite a different demographic. On Main Island, which I've done some work with over the last couple of years, they are dead keen on developing a tourism destination. They're dead keen on it. And getting, not a big resort or anything, but getting more bed and breakfasts and more events and more things happening. But they have a tiny population relative to, say, Salt Spring. They've only got a couple of thousand people. Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Ward, could you go back? What is the goal, or what the solution to the unsustainability? Is that what we're talking
Well,
about?
what I'm talking about,
or to promote tourism?
it's
'Cause
the
that's-
sustainability of the economy on the islands. That's the problem. The Chamber of Commerce has said that at the present time it's very difficult for people to make a living and sustain the economy on the island with the present government system. Which is, and remember, the economy is based primarily on tourism. That's the reality. So, what are you going to do? I don't have an answer for it.
Is it going back and giving more incentives if you do like the farm type,
Yeah.
which a lot of those properties originated as?
Well, building a
Tax
farming,
break sort of thing, if you,
you see, if you can actually build up a really strong farming economy on the island, that would it'd be a big step forward. It'd be tremendous. And I don't know if you've all seen this, but in the region, in Southern Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands, we've got kind of a renaissance on small farming going on, haven't we? Right? And it's really quite exciting. Young people going into farming. How cool is that? It hasn't been happening for years, but now it is happening. That is probably the biggest single, you've hit on the very biggest single possibility for developing an economy in Salt Spring, is that very point. What's the limiting factor?
investment,
No.
a lot of rock under the.
No, they've actually got a certain amount of arable land which is not developed.
Well, they can't buy the land though, right?
Well,
Is it
they can
landlord
actually,
law?
the owners will lease the land to them or to make some arrangements in some
Like,
cases. But there is a very strong limiting factor.
Export.
water.
Export.
Water.
Yeah.
It's water. It's about water.
But
It's
grapes,
all about
grapes
water.
grow with mineral water. How much wine can everybody drink?
Yeah, well, we've got quite a lot of wine being grown in BC. Like we were washing wine, right? Okay, so I think you've just hit on one of the answers. So there's an answer, right? Agricultural development on the island. Possibly with some arrangements for young farmers to give them support. Any other ideas? That's an idea. Yeah.
How about implementing a local currency so that it keeps the money on the island?
Yeah.
Actually, that's
Our
not
idea
bad.
came up, yeah.
Yeah, Salt Spring Island bucks. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
They do have that actually, don't they? Yeah. You can actually, there's several towns that have got their own currency. It's a kind of a good gig. Yeah, it's great. What else can you do?
Co-op or something?
Oh no, they just hand out, they hand out paper money and you can use it and you can redeem it. It's just a gimmick, but it's kind of cool, you know.
Canadian Tire money.
Canadian Tire money, yeah, right. Yeah. Any other ideas? Because I really need the ideas.
How are they marketing Salt Spring Island to the rest of, you know, those
Has
that are coming
anyone
as
seen any
destinations?
marketing for Salt
They're
Spring
ambivalent
Island?
about it.
There's
They don't really want it.
no, it's the brands though of the people that have been there. So once you're there, you buy into that
Yeah.
experience, but they're not marketing the experience.
That's right. The thing is, the island itself is not marketed. That's another point. That's point number 2. So, agricultural development, yes. Marketing the island, yes. Yeah.
I was just thinking, watching your presentation, and you asked, like, you know, where would you live? And I've spent a lot of time on the East Coast in the
Yeah.
state of Maine.
Sure.
I'm thinking about the tourism stuff that they have going there and the governance and things, and it's very different there. And I think the biggest thing is there's not community divisiveness. There's
That's
not.
right. Much more together.
Yes, and everybody is
Yeah.
working on the same thing, no matter what their age is or anything
Yeah.
like that, or income. So I think until that everyone is relatively on the same page and you don't have entire demographics fighting against each other,
That's a very good observation. I agree with you.
that's going
So,
to be
so
decreased.
what I'm hearing you say is community leadership.
Yeah, like you know, the thing about how
Mhm.
you mentioned that a lot of the decisions get made by people who aren't invested in the community.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And working out something between businesses and the retired community about taxes. Maybe the businesses take on more of a tax burden if they're
Yeah.
generating income.
Change the business tax structure.
Yeah.
So that the benefits.
So it doesn't hurt
So
the
it doesn't hurt
retirees.
the retirees.
Yeah.
That's another good point. It's very good. So leadership, reinvestment and development of the farming situation, branding and marketing as a priority. Absolutely. Those are all very good ideas, and they're all workable ideas.
And you're welcome to hire all of us.
That's right.
Well, what about what Tofino did? Because, you know, Wiccan and Ashin made such a big name to have a real flagship destination that people are going to fly from Germany or Saudi Arabia, and that's going to have spin-off, but that would mean major capital,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
top
right.
end, and
Top
it would,
end
but then it would
facilities,
be unassailable, because that's why Wiccan and Ashin since the 70s, well, the new Wiccan and Ashin, made Tofino what it is today, because what the heck was anybody going to go to Tofino for otherwise? You know, it was the luxury, top-end, prestige element of that.
It does have an effect. The downside to that is that sometimes these really high-powered hotels and so on tend to dominate everything,
Yes,
and
but
it
it might
defines
be-
the whole place. Souk Harbour House defines Souk,
Yeah.
right? And rightly so. It's a fabulous place.
Is a large part of any part of Salt Spring held by First Nations or
Not
under
very
land
much.
claims or anything?
Not too much. I don't know. Actually, that's a very good question. I don't think so. Some of the other Gulf Islands have substantial reserves on them, but Salt Spring not so much. And that's partly because of the time at which it was settled.
Same as Victoria.
Very, very early, yes. Very, very early settlement. And that makes a big difference there. Well, I think we've got to exactly half past now, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your very good ideas. I'll take these into account. I think there's some good thoughts that came out of this. So, yeah. And I'd be happy to answer if anyone would like to find out more about the master's degree program, or, you know, we are anxiously and carnivorously after students. So there we are.
Thank
Okay.
you so much, Brian. We want to thank you for
talk about in the middle of residency, he still agreed to do this. I told you what residency is like as a student. Well, as a faculty member and as a director of the school, it's even more intense. So I'm going to leave you with this thought, and it's only because it just kind of came to me based on what we've learned tonight. And it's a Chinese proverb that I'm sure you've heard, but it is, if you're planning for a year, sow rice. If you're planning for a decade, plant trees. If you're planning for a lifetime, educate the people. So really that's something we can take away for ourselves. What are we planning for as individuals and certainly as communities and as members of those communities? So thank you for joining us. If you have questions that you haven't had answered, I haven't been able to meet everyone, and I know that we're here as well a little longer if you've got some questions, but please join us again as you go through this decision-making process, because we really do want to get to know you as individuals and find a way to help you achieve the goals you've set for yourself. Thank you.